Right, week 13. You might say the grand finale of our study in praying the Psalms. And I have, every week so far in this study, I have had a 2-word title. The first word, and then one in parentheses, kind of explaining it a little bit. This week, we are talking about pilgrimage, and the word in parentheses is ascent, A-S-C-E-N-T, meaning going up. Because we will be looking at a set of 15 psalms toward the end of the book called Songs of Ascent. Now, this is one of those points where context is really important. If you look at Exodus chapter 34, verses 23 and 24, you will find 3 times in the year shall all your males appear before the Lord God, the God of Israel. For I will cast out nations before you and enlarge your borders. No one shall covet your land when you go up to appear before the Lord your God 3 times in the year. There were 3 festivals that were sort of the minimum that every, and when they say all your males, they don't mean just your males. It's basically one of those, no, none of this sending the wife and kids while I stay home and work. No. The whole family goes. And they go to worship, to offer sacrifice, to pray before the presence of the Lord. Now, you can do a lot of these other things apart from offering the sacrifices. You could do all these other things at home, right? You can worship, you can pray. Synagogue was there. But 3 times a year, they wanted everyone to gather together in Jerusalem, or, in the early days, wherever the Ark of the Covenant was housed, which was Shiloh most of the time, I think. But they wanted the nation gathered to worship as one. And these Psalms of Ascent are thought to be ones that were frequently adopted to sing on the road to these festivals. We talk about things like going up north or down south, but for them, it was up to Jerusalem. Jerusalem was a mountain fortress, such as it was. So these songs of ascent, where they were climbing up to Jerusalem. And I hope I don't need to make the connection too obvious for you between their situation and ours. I just want to ask, what better way to spend our pilgrimage than in singing these songs of ascent? So we're going to do an overview of all of these psalms. We're not going to get too deep into any of them, but I'd like you to kind of get a feel for what they're like, because they are a real variety of psalms, beginning in Psalm 120. Now, this one, after the Song of Ascent's heading, says, "In my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. Deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. What shall be given to you, and what more shall be done to you, you deceitful tongue? A warrior's sharp arrows with glowing coals of the broom tree? Woe to me that I sojourn in Meshech, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar. Too long have I had my dwelling among those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war." Now, why would you sing this on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem? Well, I think probably the key is toward that ending. Meshech was considered like a region or a people group toward the south end of the Black Sea, right? We're talking modern day Turkey area. Whereas Kedar, we're talking about the Arabian desert, way down south toward Egypt. And of course, commentators are quick to point out that one person is highly unlikely to live in both of those extremely distant points. But think about this. How many times did the people of Israel get scattered, dispersed among the nations? And yet, 3 times a year, they were called upon to travel back, you might say, to the heart of their nation. And whether you are able to do so or not, it is the song still has that flavor of a lament of God's resident alien, loving peace in a warring world. I wonder if any of us have ever felt that way. But onward. Psalm 21. This one should be more familiar. I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where does my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. Now, this makes a great deal more sense for someone who is on a pilgrimage. You think about how dangerous travel was in those days, and how often you might find yourself in need of help. Now, do you lift up your eyes to the hills for help? And the pilgrim says a resounding no. I lift up my eyes to the Lord. And did you hear that? He who keeps Israel, right? So we're thinking grand scale, the God of Israel, of this whole people group. But it's focused in the individual sense. The one who keeps all of Israel will keep you, will keep your life. You're going out and you're coming in. So no matter how the journey goes, you go in his keeping. Psalm 122. This one is of David. I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. Our feet have been standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem, built as a city that is bound firmly together, to which the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, as was decreed for Israel, to give thanks to the name of the Lord. There, thrones for judgment were set, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they be secure who love you. Peace be within your walls and security within your towers. For my brothers and companions' sake, I will say, peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your good. Now, of course, you think about they're traveling to Jerusalem, and a song that says, you know what? When they said, let's go up to the house of the Lord, I was glad. This is one of those sunshine, clear day, hard road, ready to go marching songs. Like I was glad when they said, let's go up to the house of the Lord. And the anticipation, Jerusalem, the heart, like I said before, of their worship. And that call at the end, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. You know, pilgrimage is hard enough when you're anticipating reaching the safety of the city walls. But imagine taking a pilgrimage to a city that's at war. For the sake of the community, peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, seek your good. Do you see the anticipation? The almost like you could say that the pilgrim's heart is always somewhere else. And this joy of arriving at the city of God, a place of peace and unity. You can only sing that kind of a song if you're dedicated to bringing peace and unity in your own small way. Psalm 123. To you I lift up my eyes, O you who are enthroned in the heavens. Behold, as the eyes of servants look to the hand of their master, as the eyes of a maidservant to the hand of her mistress, so our eyes look to the Lord our God till he has mercy upon us. Have mercy upon us, O Lord. Have mercy upon us, for we have had more than enough of contempt. Our soul has had more than enough of the scorn of those who are at ease, of the contempt of the proud. Why would a pilgrim sing a lament? Hmm. I think we're back to that idea of the resident alien, to be honest. Only in this case, instead of its loving peace in a warring world, we're enduring contempt of a proud and haughty world. And this idea of looking to the Lord for relief. We aren't in a society that um, has the same kind of structure as they had in terms of master and servant. But oftentimes, the servant would have to watch for direction, maybe, but also they had no power in their own right, might even say to save themselves. They relied on the stronger one, the master, the mistress, to relieve their pain and suffering. Here we have a pilgrim who has endured contempt for being one of the people of God, looking to God for relief. Because in one's own power, what can we do? Very little. Oftentimes, nothing much to the point. But we lift up our eyes. See that phrase again. Psalm 24, 124. Sorry. If it had not been the Lord who was on our side, let Israel now say, if it had not been the Lord who was on our side when people rose up against us, then they would have swallowed us up alive when their anger was kindled against us. Then the flood would have swept us away, the torrent would have gone over us. Over us would have gone the raging waters. Blessed be the Lord who has not given us as prey to their teeth. We have escaped like a bird from the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken and we have escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth. Are you starting to see the pattern here of these songs? Whether it's a lament, whether it's a song of confidence or gratitude, it's always looking to the Lord who made heaven and earth. We're talking huge scale here, but who keeps an eye on his own people and troubles himself over their trouble. And here we have gratitude, right? We often talk about, praises for answered prayer, or at least a prayer that was answered in the way we asked it to be answered. But I've noticed in my own life that oftentimes that gratitude gets swept aside by the next catastrophe that comes along. So a song like this, coming back again and again to the rescue, offering up gratitude that God has been faithful to us. Good song for a pilgrim. Psalm 125. Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be moved but abides forever. As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people from this time forth and forevermore. For the scepter of wickedness shall not rest on the land allotted to the righteous, lest the righteous stretch out their hand to do wrong. Do good, O Lord, to those who are good, and to those who are upright in their hearts. But those who turn aside to their crooked ways, the Lord will lead away with evildoers. Peace be upon Israel. Now, here's one. It must have been an imposing sight, making that final ascent to Jerusalem, the mountain fortress. And a song that sings, well, those who trust in the Lord are just like that, encompassed by strength, unshakable. And the idea that the Lord not only surrounds his people, but he will prevent unjust, evil rule from remaining with them. Not saying that it will never occur, but he will never let it remain. I expect that was pretty important in a lot of the latter days of Israel, once the kingdom had divided, and you had your okay kings, and then some of your definitely not okay kings. Psalm 126. When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dream. Then our mouth was filled with laughter and our tongue with shouts of joy. Then they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us. We are glad. Restore our fortunes, O Lord, like streams in the Negeb. Those who sow in tears shall reap with shouts of joy. He who goes out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, bringing his sheaves with him. A lot of times we just snatch those last two verses because we like them. But you have to hear the back and forth of this. The first three verses talk about the past, when the Lord restored, past tense, the fortunes of Zion. The Lord has done great things for us. But you notice the pivot point in verse 4. Restore our fortunes, O Lord. They remember what God has done in the past, but right now, in the present, they are in need of another rescue. And those last two verses are the faith of those who know what God has done in the past and who trust that he will do it again. Psalm 127, a song of Solomon. Interesting. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved sleep. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate. Now, this definitely has two different halves. The first one being, of course, that every effort is in vain without the Lord's support, right? We can work ourselves half to death, but if we are not working with the Lord, what we're doing is basically pointless. And I think it's interesting um, that this is a psalm of ascent, because my thought had always been, so everybody leaves their home and their land unattended 3 times a year to go to these festivals, which is why I didn't just read Exodus 3:23, but also 24, because it's like God knew this is going to be our knee-jerk reaction. It's like, seriously, do you want me to just leave it, walk away and let what, people rob my house, take my livestock? But that last part, the Lord will drive out the nations before you and give you security so that you need not be afraid to obey. So why then does it end up with children are a heritage of the Lord? It's like, hmm. And I love the comment in my study Bibles, like the first section, this does not eliminate human activity. As children are the Lord's gift, yet the husband and wife must do something in bringing the children into the world and raising them to be faithful members of God's people. All right, enough said. But this idea, what those of you who have children, what has caused you the most anxiety over the course of your lives? I suspect it's your kids. But this promise is really interesting to me, because he says, unless the Lord builds the house, is he talking just about construction? I don't think so. Just something to think about. But for a pilgrim on his way, not having to worry about the safety of home, family, enables them to go forward with confidence, knowing that everything important to them is in the hands of God. Psalm 128, another wisdom song. Blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways. You shall eat the fruit of the labor of your hands. You shall be blessed, and it shall be well with you. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. Your children will be like olive shoots around your table. That's kind of a weird mental image right there. But think about this. In a land where your survival, let alone your prosperity, depends a lot on good harvests. Harvests of grapes from the vine, olives from the tree. The metaphor is not that weird then, because right, fruitfulness, the simple and yet profound blessings of one person's life. Then, verse 5, the Lord bless you from Zion. May you see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life. May you see your children's children, and peace be upon Israel. These blessings of one person's life then feed into the community of the saints and build the entirety. Psalm 129, greatly have they afflicted me from my youth, let Israel say. Greatly have they afflicted me from my youth, yet they have not prevailed against me. The plowers plowed upon my back, they made long their furrows. The Lord is righteous, he has cut the cords of the wicked. Here we have a psalm of confidence oddly enough, for something that begins, greatly have they afflicted me from my youth. But it is confidence from a sufferer who knows that God has not allowed, nor will he allow the wicked to prevail, which is an important thing, particularly when you're on pilgrimage and at the mercy of every roving band of thugs and robbers who might want everything you have and possibly your life as well. Psalm 130. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. O Lord, hear my voice. You have this psalm crying out to God for mercy and for forgiveness, for redemption. And yet it is also a psalm of faithfulness, because if you go down further, it's like, if you, O Lord, should mark iniquities, that means if you kept track of my sins, who could stand? But with you there is forgiveness, that you may be feared. I wait for the Lord. My soul waits, and in his word I hope. My soul waits for the Lord more than watchmen for the morning. When you're camping out on a road trip, the nights can seem really long. And I'm not talking about, the kind of camping where you bring your own bunk with you in a trailer. I'm talking about you're walking the whole way and you're sleeping on the ground, maybe wrapped in a garment of yours. You better have watchmen keeping a track of your group during the night. And those watchmen are really going to be eager to see the sunrise. And this is the kind of faithfulness, the kind of watchfulness that the song talks about, looking to God for his rescue, for his redemption. But the confidence that it will come, that is important. Psalm 131, O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself for things too great and too marvelous for me, but I have calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. And this one, the confidence of a soul that is humbled and quiet and trusts enough in God to rest. Psalm 132. Remember, O Lord, in David's favor. This one is a royal psalm. And it talks about, remember David's vow. I will not enter my house or get into my bed. I will not give sleep to my eyes or slumber to my eyelids until I find a place for the Lord, a dwelling place for the mighty one of Jacob. They're headed to the temple for this pilgrimage. Why not rehearse its history? David swore a vow that he would build. He was not allowed to build. He was a man of war. Solomon built it, but the outcome is the same. Everywhere you go. We heard of it in Ephrathah. We found it in the fields of Jaar. Let us go to his dwelling place. Let us worship at his footstool. And then you have this image of joyful worship and the promise of the Lord back to David. You want to build a house for me? I will build a house for you. And his promise to Solomon that he would set his name and his attention in Zion. This is a joyful song. So is Psalm 133. How good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. It is like precious oil on the head, running down on the beard of Aaron, running down on his. Why are we talking about somebody dripping with oil? There's a connection somehow between a community dwelling together peacefully, one in purpose, and this idea of consecration. right? When they poured oil on the head of Aaron, they were consecrating him to the service of the Lord. He was, in effect, being made holy. There is a connection somewhere between the unity of God's people and their holiness, their consecration to the Lord. Psalm 134. We've come to the end of them. This one is lovely and short. Come, bless the Lord, all you servants of the Lord, who stand by night in the house of the Lord. Lift up your hands to the holy place and bless the Lord. And may the Lord bless you from Zion, he who made heaven and earth. A liturgical song. Blessings on those who serve, even in the obscurity of the hours of the night. Now, it's a strange collection. It's a varied collection. How do we pray it? Well, there are two things that came to my mind when I was asking myself this. There are all kinds of prayers for the road. There's another psalm, Psalm 84, that says, blessed are those whose strength is in you, in whose heart are the highways to Zion. The road ahead of us is not as well defined as the road ahead of those pilgrims. And yet, though the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, we must find our encouragement along the way in worship through all types of seasons of life, through lament, through confidence, through joy, through gratitude. And then it occurred to me, it's also a reminder that there are all kinds of pilgrims on the road. Sad ones, confident ones, suffering ones, rejoicing ones. And these many kinds of songs should remind us to remember one another, to dwell together in unity, as the song says, and to convey to each kind of pilgrim the blessing of the Lord. How many times do you see in these songs, may the Lord bless you from Zion? We don't bless one another enough, in my opinion. And then, of course, there's always that command that Paul gave. Greet one another. Songs and hymns and spiritual songs. We have our own pilgrimage songs. We don't really sing often enough. I've had stuck in my head for the last 3 days. We're marching to Zion. Beautiful, beautiful Zion. We need to remember we are on a pilgrimage. And it's a hard way. But if we take these songs, these psalms, not just the ones we talked about today, but all of them, and we borrow from them, we absorb them, and then we pray them back, we will find greater strength for the road.